Okay, we're back. We're now on the Dharani chapter, the 26th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the orally transmitted teachings explication by the Daishonin. From the record of the orally transmitted teachings, we're going to go back one. We got all the way to 85, the top of 85, but then I just realized that I blew right by referring to one of the characters on the Gohonzon that is very significant for me, being an asura. And asura is what I've been saying for a long time, but I found out I mispronounced it badly. The bottom line is that I'm going to go ahead and go back to point 3, and this says on the top of page 84, because otherwise we'd have just been starting over here. And this is all going to be about that, the demon daughters and so forth, so it all ties in. Point 3, concerning the goddess mother of demon children. Now, as I grew up in the SGI and actually, Nichiren Shoshu, we were always referred to this demon mother as Kishimojin. Okay, and I missed the fact that Kishimojin is referred to, but he takes her name and describes it in components. So I want to read this so that I read it correctly as long as we're doing this. All right, so going back to point 3 concerning the goddess mother of demon children, and those are the 3rd row or the 4th row, whichever it is. They're right down there above, toward the middle, a little bit lower than the middle of the Gohonzon. The demon mother, got Namo Myoho Renge Kyo down the middle, Nichiren, and then the demon mother is on the right side, and as you look at it, the 10 demon daughters are on the left side. So the record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word demon stands for the father, and the word children stands for the 10 demon daughters. The word mother is Hariti. Okay, now here it's got an asterisk there. It says taking the words in the name in reverse order, and you might wonder why he often says, we're going to do it in reverse order. It's because of the concept of the reality that, when we talk about the 10 worlds, it starts with hell. Hell is number 1, okay? And then it goes up to the 10th. The 10th realm is Buddhahood, right? So a lot of times he starts with something it's being started at the highest order, even though it's numerically, it's not the first, it's not the second. Okay, so that's the whole point there. So the word mother is Hariti. Taking the words in the name in reverse order of Kishimojin, we may say that the words goddess represents the 9th consciousness. Okay, so the realm where Buddhas go when they go into Ku. The word mother represents the 8 consciousnesses and the level at which ignorance appears. The word children represents the 7th and 6th consciousnesses. The word demon represents the first 5 consciousnesses, those of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. In the case of the teaching that pertains to transmigration, the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, the goddess mother of the demon children is an evil demon. Now here, I want to break this down. The asterisk was further up, but he's talking about Kishimojin now. Kishimojin. Here, the Japanese name Kishimojin is explained. Ki means demon, Shi means children, Mo means mother, and Jin means goddess. The order of these elements is reversed in the explanation above, obviously. The word mother represents the 8 consciousnesses, the level at which ignorance appears. In other words, the levels in non-substantiality the mind can be in that are not in accord with the truth of the Dharma realm, Buddhahood, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So mother represents the 8 consciousnesses, the level at which ignorance appears. So that the 5 consciousnesses and the 6th consciousness are, the 6th consciousness is mind. The word children represents the seventh and sixth consciousness. Those are the lower levels of consciousness that go beyond the realm of being in a manifest form. The word demon represents the first, because your mind continues. The five consciousnesses, as I'm going to get into, let me just start it again. This is really kind of complicated. So, taking the name of the words in reverse order, Kishimoji, we may say that the word goddess represents the ninth consciousness, the highest consciousness. The word mother represents the eighth consciousness, and that's the Amala or Alea. That's the Amala consciousness, I think, represents the eighth consciousness, the level at which ignorance appears, because it's still not the ninth consciousness, the purity of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The word children represents the seventh and sixth consciousnesses. Okay, so there's another layer above the mind. That's the seventh consciousness. And there's names, there's terms for all of these, by the way. If you want to look them up, the nine consciousnesses, you'll find them there in the dictionary. The word demon represents the first five consciousnesses, those of all of us that we, sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, the ones that we use every day to exist, plus our sixth consciousness, which is our mind. In the case of the teachings that pertain to transmigration, because this is, again, he's talking about what happens when we die and the temporary gathering of the five components separate, okay? What happens to the component of the mind, which is the most important thing, because that's the state that you will exist in non-substantiality in. Most specifically, your mind is what you will carry forward into your next lifetime. It's not so much your appearance, your form, your nature. Those will all change. Those will all be predicated on where the mind is in the next lifetime, if you will, the next time you incarnate. So it says, in the case of the teachings that pertain to transmigration. So this is the process of going from temporary existence into non-substantiality, and then coming out of non-substantiality back into temporary existence. This is, some people would call this reincarnation, but we don't do reincarnation. We do transmigration, which means that we don't come back as the same combination of the five components. It's all based on the karma we've created, right? That's what we carry in. That's what's held on to in the state of mind. So that mind is consciousness. It's a form of consciousness. So you've got the sixth consciousness is your regular mind, seventh, eighth, and then ninth, okay? In the case of the teachings that pertain to transmigration, the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, the goddess mother of demon children is an evil demon. But in the case of the teachings that pertain to the extinction of transmigration, in other words, you're no longer going back and forth in the six realms, you're now in the four higher realms, okay? And eventually you're into Buddhahood, because that's the whole point, is that once you get into the stage that would be referred to as cause awakened one, you already heard the name and the words of the truth, right? So you're on the path to Buddhahood. So you will attain Buddhahood at some point in some lifetime in the future, once that seed has been planted of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, so the extinction of transmigration means that you no longer will ever be born in the lower six. Okay, and as you escalate from voice hearer to cause awakened one to Bodhisattva, and hopefully you can do that all in a single lifetime, and Buddha. You don't go backwards. You don't go from Buddha to cause awakened one. You don't go from Buddha to voice hearer. Understood? So you're no longer transmigrating in the manner in which people, until they have the seed of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo planted, transmigrate, go from temporary existence into Ku, into non-substantiality, come back into temporary existence again. The repeated process of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. So, but in the teachings that pertain to the extinction and transmigration, the teachings that pertain to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the Lotus Sutra teachings, he says, Lotus Sutra teachings, again, it's the Daimoku again. She acts as a benevolent demon. That's why she's on the Gohonzon. All right. Here we may say that the goddess mother of demon children and the 10 demon daughters represent the mutual possession of the 10 worlds and the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors. That is the principle of 3,000 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Living beings. All living beings have the 3,000 realms. Okay? All right. The deity known as Sambo Kojin or Kojin of the 3 treasures is a manifestation of the 10 demon daughters. These 3 types of Kojin are the god of hunger and thirst, the god of greed and desire, the god of blocks and hindrances. Now the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, because they transform those 3 poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness into the 3 virtues of Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation, are not to be identified with the god Sambo Kojin, because it's transformed. So it's transformed the evil aspects of your life in a single lifetime. When you embrace the Gohonzon and you chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, you bring forth your Buddha nature and you become connected to the Dharma realm, even though your reward body hasn't fully recognized it unless you've hit the 6th stage of practice. So the whole point is you purify your life no matter who you were, no matter what you had done. You know, you could be Devadatta and it wouldn't matter. You become the Buddha in your present form. Okay, so that's why they are not to be identified with these greed, anger, and foolishness, the 3 poisons. They're to be identified with the Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation, because that's the whole point. Once you discover once the Dharma body, which is the one of the 3 bodies that we are eternally endowed with, right? You've got the Dharma body, the reward body, the manifested body. The reward body is the wisdom that takes you toward perfecting or revealing your Dharma body, which is it's all combined. The manifested, outside of our mind and body, there is no Buddha, okay? But there is a path that you've entered when you hear the name and the words of the truth that isn't all the way to the 6th stage, right? You've got hearing the name and the words of the truth and the other 5 that get you there, or 4 that get you there. Okay, so for persons who have no faith in the Lotus Sutra, it continues, Kojin is what the name implies, a rough god who awakens demons. All of this stuff I read here in this paragraph. But when he is in the presence of practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, and specifically speaking of when he's in the presence of those who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and seek to be of the same mind as Nichiren, the original teacher, he acts as a guardian deity. Okay, instead of screwing with you, you get protection. So the Kishimojin is on the Gohonzon. The 10 demon daughters are on the Gohonzon. We're going to go forward, and there's a lot of other characters from the Gohonzon that are mentioned in this Dharani chapter. That's why we don't do magical spells and incantations. We get the effect of all of that just by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon. Their enlightened form, their enlightened state come forth and manifest in our lives. So, okay, he says he acts as a guardian demon, this Kojin, Sambo Kojin. All right, that's who we were talking about. All right, so he's the demon stands for father. Sambo Kojin. All right, I hope I didn't confuse anybody, but I'm trying to explain how this is all tied together, and it's actually all represented on the Gohonzon, and that's why we don't do true word shit, because we don't have to, because chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon manifests the same influence as we might get from mudras and mantras from some other teaching and the trace teachings prior to the Daishonin, all right, and prior to the Lotus Sutra, actually. Point 4 on the passage, excellent, excellent. This is where we should have started, page 185. Point 4 on the passage, excellent, excellent. If you can shield and guard those who accept and uphold the mere name of the Lotus Sutra, your merit will be immeasurable. And he's speaking again to the demon daughters at this point in time. The record of the Ole transmitted teaching says the name of the Lotus Sutra means the Daimoku. As I've said over and over again, in the latter day of the law, The Lotus Sutra is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. They're synonymous at this point. Those of the passage, the word those of the passage refers to the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra among the living beings in the country of Japan. We may also say that while the word those may refer either to men or women, because everybody chants, both women and men chant. Here it is intended as praise for women in particular, which is significant because the Daishonin actually qualifies the praise for women in a time frame when women were not praised. The teachings other than the Daishonin's teaching, prior to anything that has to do with the Daishonin, other than if you were talking about perceiver of the world sounds appearing as a woman, suddenly transforming into a women were considered not capable of attaining Buddhahood. Don't forget, when we get into the Theravada teachings where you're talking about behavioral circumstances, rules of discipline, rules of behavior, can't think of the school, but the bottom line is that there were 500 rules for women, but only 250 for men. So men were always considered in a separate, better class than women. And so here's the process of the Daishonin qualifying an equalization between male and female as it regards to sex, because he's going to refer now to the Dragon King's daughter as well. All right, so going again to point 4, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says the name of the Lotus Sutra means the Daimoku, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Those of the passage refers to all the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra among the living beings of the country of Japan, men, male and female. We may also say that while the words those may refer to either to men or women, here it is intended as praise for women in particular, and thus refers to women. The 10 demon daughters shield and guard women in particular. It is like the case of the Dragon King's daughter who speaks of the role of saving women when she says, I unfold the doctrines of the great vehicle to rescue living beings from suffering. Chapter 12, Devadatta. I hope you remember that. This is a similar case in which the person refers to a woman in particular. In the Medicine King chapter, which we just got done reading 3 chapters ago, as the 23rd chapter, it says, in particular, in which, in a similar case, well, there are Dharanis in Medicine King too. Medicine King's got some, and I'll get that to the bottom of this. It is like the case of the Dragon King's daughter who speaks of the role of saving women when she says, I unfold the doctrines of the great vehicle to rescue living beings from suffering, particularly women. From chapter 12, Devadatta. There is a similar case in which the person refers to a woman in particular in the Medicine King 23rd chapter that reads, a person who can accept and uphold this sutra, and it's got an asterisk. And so here's the quote from the text of the 28th chapter of Lotus Sutra in the Medicine King 23rd chapter. It says, the Medicine King chapter speaks of women who accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra, saying, if there is a woman who hears this chapter on the former affairs of the Bodhisattva Medicine King, chapter 23, and is able to accept and uphold it, and there is a woman who hears this sutra and carries out his practices as the sutra directs. Therefore, Nichiren identified the person in the quotation from the same chapter as a woman. So he says, and so it continues here. There is a similar case. Okay, a person who can accept and uphold this sutra is particularly pertaining on point 4, an important point 4 of the Dharani chapter to females. All right, point 5 at the bottom of page 185 on the passage Kunti. You and your attendants should shield and guard the teachers of the law such as these. And there's not been a reference to Kunti or anybody named Kunti, so I looked it up. And Kunti is one of the 10 demon daughters. Okay, and she's, I guess, the oldest. I'm just going to read this real quick. One of the 10 demon daughters who appear in the Dharani 26th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. After the demon daughters pledge in the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha to guard the practitioners of the sutra, because these are all protective influences that are on the Gohonzon, right? The Buddha tells them, if you can shield and guard those who accept and uphold the mere name of the Lotus Sutra, your merit will be immeasurable. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the name of the Lotus Sutra, literally. Okay? It says, then how much more so if you should shield and guard those who accept and uphold it in its entirety. Kunti, you and your attendants should shield and guard the teachers of the law such as these. Okay, so going on then to point 5, Kunti, on the passage, Kunti, pardon me, you and your attendants should shield and guard teachers of the law such as these. Men and women who praise the entire Lotus Sutra, which is what we do when we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's the entire Lotus Sutra in the latter day. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says Kunti in her original form or state is the Bodhisattva Manjushri, okay, which is like number 2, the Buddha's major disciple that was down in the realm of the Dragon King, and he's down in the bottom of the ocean, if you remember the earlier chapters, all the way from in the beginning of the text. The sutra passage is saying that wherever the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra may be. So that's why Manjushri is so significant. Manjushri was at the bottom of the ocean with the Dragon King. Whether on land or sea, she will shield and guard them. 9 evil and 1 good, as the expression has it. The passage makes clear that Kunti is the one good daughter among the 10 demon daughters. In terms of the 10 evil acts that arise from earthly desires, Kunti corresponds to the second of the 10, the act of stealing. This is because the daughters are counted in reverse order. Once again, this reverse order thing comes up. So Kunti, the 9th daughter, corresponds to the second of the 10 evil acts, that of stealing. Point 6, the last of the 6 important points from the Dharani chapter. Point 6, concerning the 5 groups of supernatural spells pronounced in this chapter. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, and excuse me, I just had lunch. The 5 groups of supernatural spells represent our individual bodies, or Myoho Renge-kyo. Myo is represented by the 10 demon daughters. Ho, now here we go with the 4 heavenly kings, the 4 big characters that you see in the 4 corners of the Gohonzon, right? Okay. Ho is the heavenly king, upholder of the nation. Rin by the heavenly king, Rin by the king, heavenly king, increase in growth. Ge by the heavenly king, wide-eyed, and Kyo by the heavenly king, Vajravana. The 5 characters Myoho Renge-kyo thus correspond to the 5 groups of supernatural spells, and the 5 groups of supernatural spells are our individual bodies. The spells of the 10 demon daughters represent the single character Myo, mystic, and are made up of 19 phrases. That's, again, if we got into the 28th chapter, you would see that there are a bunch of lines in Sanskrit that are very difficult to pronounce, and they're supposedly magical incantations, okay? The spells of the 10 demon daughters represent the single character Myo and are made up of 19 phrases. The sutra text says of them, though they, the enemies of the law, may climb upon our very heads, they will never be able to trouble the teachers of the law, from chapter 26. The spells of the upholder of the nation represent the single character Ho and are made up of the 9 phrases the sutra text says of them. These Dharanis are supernatural these supernatural spells are pronounced by 42 million Buddhists. The number 4 here stands for the 4 sufferings of birth, old age, birth, aging, sickness, and death. The number 10 stands for the 10 worlds, and the number 2 stands for the 2 conditions of delusion and enlightenment. And he's got an asterisk here too. Again, here the number 42 is presented by 4, 10, and 2 according to the Japanese way of reading numbers. The number 4 here stands for the 4 sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death. The number 10 stands for the 10 worlds. The number 2 stands for the 2 conditions of delusion and enlightenment. Upholder of the nation is a name indicative of the environment in which living beings exist. And the word Ho represents the 10 worlds of living beings. The spells of increase and growth represent the single character Rin and are made up of 19 phrases. The sutra text says of them, these dharanis, these supernatural spells, are pronounced by the Buddha equal in number to the sands of the Ganges, and all of them respond with joy. All of the Buddhas respond with joy. The words respond with joy refer to the world or realm of Buddhahood. The spells of spells of wide-eyed represent the single character Ge, and Ge, Ge, and thus are made up of 43 phrases. The text says of them, these dharanis will bring great benefit to living beings. The spells of Vasravana represent the single character Kyo and are made up of 6 phrases. The sutra text says of them, and I will also shield and guard those who uphold this sutra. Okay, and that completes the Dharani chapter in terms of the orally transmitted teachings. I hope that you understood what I was trying to express to tie it all together. And next we'll start with chapter 27, former affairs of the wonderful King Adornment, 3 important points before we get to the last chapter, which will be the encouragements of the Bodhisattva Universal were the 6 points. So we got 3 points, 6 points, and then we will be done with the 28 chapter explication of the passages from the Lotus Sutra for the orally transmitted teachings. We'll continue then on page 187 the next time we get together. Thank you very much.